Scott, I'm going to let you in just a second. Okay, here we go. Are you guys watch ready? Hi, you guys.
Hello.
It's April, and it's episode 40 of Cheerful Conversations.
Hello.
I've got my guest co-host coming on in just a second, but my kids are home for Thanksgiving, and they just really wanted to be on YouTube, so they're saying hello.
Hello.
And now they're going to graciously leave and go play more Fortnite, right?
It's actually Call of Duty.
Oh, you switched to Call of Duty. So don't judge, because I don't know if my if you have kids 10 and younger who are on playing shooter games, but that's what I do in my house. So okay, all right, let's be good now. I'm going to bring on my guest co-host in just a second if I can figure out how to do that. We're having some technical difficulties today, so that's going to be just the way that our show starts. Can you guys close that door? But just to see a little bit of what happens in my world, and I'm going to bring Scott on in just a second. And I'm going to switch to this gallery view. Yay, he's here!
Is it working?
It's working!
Yes!
Yay!
So it wasn't giving me any video or audio options, but you had to invite me in, right, for it to happen?
Yeah. So, this show is live now, just so you know, because
we are live.
We are live. So I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard from him in like 5 more minutes. Am I going to do this by myself? And I'm sitting here like, should I do it by myself? I should do it by myself. But what am I going to talk about? And what if he's ready? And what if, so everybody gets to see one of my favorite people. Scott Rose is on the show today. I just want to make sure that all the technology is working, and you're going to... Can you see it?
Okay. There's nothing more exciting to a live audience than watching technical difficulties. That's pretty much that's everyone's favorite thing to watch, I believe.
Yeah, I was like, should I do this? But I'm so glad that you're here, and we're going to navigate. And what I love about the show is that it's like so super real and raw, and mistakes happen, and we just go with the flow. And I am so thankful that I know how to improvise, and I'm thankful that you do too, because so that all you guys know like what was happening in this week. And I know that it's like crazy because it's like the day before Thanksgiving. So first of all, Scott, I'm just so grateful that you are on here today with me. I know,
April, I'm so grateful that you asked me to be here with you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I know. So the backstory with just how I've set up the show, this is now my 40th episode. So like more episodes than I am old. And
that's fantastic.
And what I do with every co-host is I send them this like long message that just kind of like, I just verbally vomit all over them and tell them the flow of the show. And I do very little preparation, but I just kind of walk them through what to expect, just to make them, if they're nervous, to calm them down, but just to give them things and just so that they know what to expect. So I sent Scott, I kind of waited till the last minute, and I sent Scott a message yesterday in the morning. So a little bit in a procrastination mode. And then he got the message that was 11 minutes and 30 seconds long or something. Something like that. So I sent that to him and it was blank. So it was just all like crackle. So that was technology fail number 1. So he sent me a message this morning, which I got telling me that he had no idea what I said at about 11:50. And I'm like, I'm getting out of the shower and trying to get dressed. So yeah, then I was like, do you have the link? Do you have everything? So it was just a little bit of a scramble, but we're here.
Here we are. Yeah. Oh, and then I was in a healing session, EFT, emotional freedom therapy session right before this, so you couldn't reach me in the hour leading up to this.
Oh my gosh.
So but we finally, look at this, right at the stroke of 1:00 p.m. Central Standard Time, we both, everything
came together.
All came together.
Oh
that
my
all
God,
came
so funny.
together.
Yeah, so part of that is that I usually have my co-hosts get on 30 minutes in advance so that we can test out any technology and just chit chat and all that stuff. So we didn't get that today.
Oh my God, we did not get that.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe we'll just go a little long and take, whatever. We'll see. I mean, and I've been going long for all of my shows. So it'll be, I'll have to tell you what I was going to talk about for an hour by myself if you didn't show up. And I was like, there's no way he's going to do that to me, but I'm just going to keep it.
There's no way I would ever do
No way. Yay.
But Apryl, I also think you just came up with another podcast idea, which is the whole show about technical challenges.
Would you start that with me? We'll be like, okay. And oh my God, one of my clients was telling me about this. What is it called? It's like ASMR, where like people are like talking really softly, and you can't see me when I put my face in the microphone, but they like make sounds and scratches, and it's supposed to like stimulate your hearing senses. I was
really?
Googling it on YouTube, and I was like, this is really interesting. There was this like girl that was just like clawing at the microphone like foam, and she's like,
oh wow,
she's like whispering like, and I hope that you are having a good weekend, like, and this is really funny the way that this looks, where you just can't see my head when I'm talking into my microphone. I don't know how this sounds, but like, okay, that was
I can hear. Oh, I can hear your whispers. I can hear everything. Wait, you're saying that people do this whispering thing on the podcast for
no, they do it on like, I don't know, they do it in YouTube videos, or or you put it's just an audio that you listen to, and it's like scratching and like just random stuff. I'll send you a link.
Oh wow! Is it supposed to be like a very like inspirational thing? Like it activates a part of your brain or something?
I don't know. I think it's something with your senses, and I don't know. I just heard about it, and I was like, that's weird that people like, do they do that for a living? I don't know, but they just create these audios that are supposed to like put you in this like, I don't know if it's a meditative thing, or I don't know. I don't even know if it's like a erotic thing. I don't know. I just heard about it, but it was just like, people are like whispering.
That actually reminds me of, have you heard like those theta brainwave music audio things that you could put on? There's something that and I've done this before, there's these YouTube videos, it's audio that goes for like 8 hours, and it's music, but it actually is supposed to activate your theta brain waves, and it enables you to get into a deeper sleep as you sleep at night. The music is specifically composed in such a way that it activates these deep things in your brain, and you have like the deepest, most peaceful sleeps you've ever had if you play these theta brainwave music audio tracks while you're sleeping.
Maybe I need to do that.
You should check it out. I tried it like a couple times, and I literally woke up feeling so incredibly refreshed and relaxed. And then I forgot about it. I stopped doing it, but I tried it for like a couple days, and it actually seemed to work. I
will make a note to self. You learn something new every day, and this is what I love. So, Scott, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, but like, I think Scott and I are like the epitomes of like ultimate nerds, and we are like we are so confident and proud about like channeling this thing. But we both. When did we see each other? A month ago?
Yeah, like a month ago. Yeah.
Was it right before I went to New York?
It was like 2 days before you went to New York. Have you celebrated your tattoos with?
See, look at I got my 2 tattoos on my arms that I told you about, and then I got one on my shoulder. So yeah, we still have to catch up, but I think we had a 4-hour conversation about a month ago at a restaurant. We ate so much food, and we just couldn't stop. I actually lost my voice the next 2 days. I don't know if I talked. Oh yeah, because I did see you at your show a couple days later. So he was in Chicago. It was amazing. But Scott and I'll just jump to this, and I'll have you explain it to everybody what you do. But Scott and I met at a conference, is it 2 years ago? Think Better, Live Better, which is run by Mark and Angel Chernoff, which was a great, awesome conference. I think they've been doing it for like 4 years now. And hi to them if they ever see this. But Scott was speaking at the conference, and I was volunteering. So I was able to get to know him. And we've just stayed in touch ever since. And we have a shared love of improv. We have a shared love of being nerdy. There's so many great things, and he's one of my favorite people. So I'm like so glad to finally have him on the show. And Scott, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do and the brilliance that you bring into this world?
Oh, Apryl, that's so sweet of you. Well, thank you so much. Apryl, you're one of my favorite people too. You're probably the most positive person that I know. And I love your energy. And you're so right. When we went out to dinner in Chicago, we not only closed out that restaurant, but I think they were sweeping around us trying to get us out of there. Right? Like, I
And
mean,
he
we went,
made me talk like most of the time. So like we're still due for like a reciprocal conversation where he does all the talking. Maybe I'll get a little bit of that today, but we'll see.
oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, as far as what I do, I am the Inspirational Nerd. My website is theinspirationalnerd.com. And so I do motivational speaking, inspirational speaking, but my main, I love that, but my other main focus and primary focus is being a keto health coach, where I coach people back to being thin, healthy, and disease-free again. So that's my thing. My thing is bringing health to the world, reversing diseases that people already have, and making them fully healthy and fully thin again. And it's so incredibly easy. People just need to know what to do. People have just been given the wrong advice their whole life. Once they get the right advice, it's almost instantaneous for them to become thin, healthy, and completely disease-free. And that's what I do. So I'm bringing health to the world, and I love it. I love it
I love it.
because it feels like so much joy to be healing everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm a healer.
Yeah. And so you guys know today's theme is the easy way to being healthy. We're going to talk about that in a little bit after we get through all the introductory fun stuff. Scott has no idea how the show flows unless you saw a previous episode or anything like that, which you might have not had time, which is totally fine.
I think you wanted me to go in blind to it, except for your 11-minute
Yeah,
introduction.
I was like, this is fine.
Which I never got. We never got because of the technical difficulties. So I don't know what's coming.
Yeah. So, but I think when we met, you weren't doing the keto health coaching yet, right?
That is correct. So I made a big transition in my life over the last year. For my entire life, my main thing was computers, software development, IT stuff. I traveled around the country for 6 years with Apple Computer and Steve Jobs. That was sort of my big claim to fame. And I spoke for them on stage at all their major events. I helped them open up the first 21 Apple retail stores in the country. And I was a public speaker for them. I got up on stage at their events, in the theaters in their stores. They used to have theaters in all their stores, and traveled for 6 years with Steve Jobs, the marketing team. And so I did that. I was writing iPhone apps for companies. I was writing Mac OS apps for companies. So my whole life was essentially Apple computer related and software related. So what's so funny is my mission at the time, because I started back way before the internet was even around, and or before people were using the internet. And I started back way before people even had email addresses, before people had computers in their pockets. And so I was so passionate about bringing technology to the masses. And what I realized was, after 20, 25 years of doing it was actually more than that. I actually was doing it for 27 years. And after 27 years of doing it, there were two things that happened. One was I started getting really, really bored because it wasn't a challenge for me anymore to work with technology. And the other thing was, which is more important, is that I felt like my mission was accomplished. My mission was to make people's lives easier and bring technology to the world. Every single one of us has a supercomputer in our pockets now. I feel like my job is done there. Like, I got the world digitized. And I have a new mission now, which is, we have another problem we need to address, which is everyone in America, not everyone, but 80% of people in America are obese. They're pre-diabetic. They have autoimmune disorders. They have gut issues. They have, I think I already said obesity. People are dying of heart attacks, strokes, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, type 2 diabetes. Every single one of these things, even stuff like depression, arthritis, littler things that are sort of more annoyances to people. All of these things, the big things and the little things, they can either be completely prevented or completely reversed. For example, type 2 diabetes, people have been told that can never be reversed. You just have to manage it your entire life. It's a complete lie. Every single case, 100% of type 2 diabetes patients can completely reverse their diabetes in less than 6 months. And it's a proven scientific fact, but this information has not been given to people. And so what I realize is we have a country, we have an entire country of people who are sick and not feeling well, and they're fat, and people know it. And it's so easy to fix all this. And this is my new mission. My new mission, my earlier mission was to be a digital evangelist and get everyone productive and get them on computers.
Yeah.
Done. Now my mission is to heal everyone and get everyone thin, healthy, and disease-free. And it's so incredibly easy. People just have to know what to do. And that's it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're actually going to dive into all this, and I will explain kind of the perspective that I'm coming at when we have this conversation, because I know most people know, for me, like, I've been very blessed with a great metabolism, so I haven't struggled with many health issues, but I've mentally struggled with the idea of how to be healthy. And in my own journey over the last 5 years, trying to understand like how I can eat more healthy. And I always know that there's so much opportunity for growth for me, but sometimes with just the way the amount of different diets and different options and the different things that are happening in the health space, it can get very overwhelming to understand what's going to work for you. And so I'm going to come at it from this lens. And I don't know that much about keto. I know a ton of people around me that have done it. I don't even know. I mean, and Scott, I know from the little bit that you told me, but I'm pretty much going to come in with a very open mind, but I'm also understanding too, because I know part of your journey has tried, being a vegetarian, or people, I know a ton of people who are vegan, and, I think, different things work for different people, but I'm really curious to hear about that journey for you, because you've tried a whole bunch of different things and came across just the keto lifestyle, and that has been working insanely well for you. So we'll talk about that in a second. I have two to three more things that I need to ask you before we jump into talking about health. So
this is so exciting because I don't know anything you're going to ask me, so I'm very excited.
So I ask every single one of my co-hosts, answer the question, what do you geek out on? And we could change it to, what do you nerd out on here? But it has to be something that's completely like not involving your business and your work passions, because most of the time the people that I talk to are doing they geek out on what they're doing in their work. So what's something that's maybe like a fun fact that you nerd out on?
Oh, wow. I feel like maybe I should just go for the obvious one, which is at the top of my head, which is improv.
Okay.
Improv comedy. But what I really love is I spent the last 9 years of my life in Austin, Texas, where they do a very special type of improv comedy there that many people don't know about, which is in Austin, they specialize in full-length improvised plays. So instead of like the things that you see like when you go to Second City or you see on TV with Whose Line Is It Anyway, like little quick 2-minute sketches, what we do in Austin is we create an entire 2-hour play that is completely improvised. We'll know the genre going into it. So we'll know that, today we're doing a science fiction play, or we're doing a horror play, or we're doing a romantic comedy play. So we'll know the genre. And sometimes the genre can get very, very specific, like we're doing a Harry Potter play today. But that's all we know going into it, is what the genre is going to be. Yeah. And then over the next 2 hours to typically sold out houses of 100 people, in the theater, we create characters, relationships, plot, storyline, dialogue, drama, cliffhangers. We have an intermission, so we get to a cliffhanger right before the intermission, and it's all made up on the spot. And it is like the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. Like, I'm usually like dripping with sweat by the end of these shows because it's so terrifying.
Yeah.
And yet the most fulfilling thing I've ever done, because you're literally living on the edge of there's 100 people there for entertainment, and there's no safety net, and you're just creating a play, and it makes sense, and it engages their emotions. So that's what I really, really geek out on.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I got to see a snippet of that when he came in, because they were doing like a dramatic improv comedy festival here in Chicago, and I get to see him perform. And I was very tired from all the conversations we had the couple nights before. Was it the day before? I don't know, but
It was the day before.
it was great. I mean, I think that might even be something that I should probably try eventually, because I am very much immersed into the standard improv sketches that you see. I also really like music improv, so I'm like, I think I'm not just like the general improv. Not that it's bad, but like these more specialty types of improv like seem to be more fun. I need to.
Oh my God, yeah, well, you love improv. You're so great at it.
Oh.
And you love singing, and that's, we do a lot of singing.
Improvised opera. Could you imagine that? Like,
oh my gosh. They actually did an improvised opera in Austin.
That's amazing.
It's right up your alley.
Oh geez, I don't know about opera, but we'll see. But that's amazing.
You told me that you were super into musicals.
I am. Do you see I have my little ukulele here that I've been playing since May, and I try to.
Are you gonna play us a little? Are you gonna play us a little song?
Maybe at the end. I want to make sure that we get all the goodness out of our conversation and all of that stuff. I'll play you what I'm working on, maybe as a nice little teaser. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos next year with the ukulele and random stuff, so I'll tell you about that.
Oh, I love it. Apryl, do you realize that when I was in Chicago, I kept you up past midnight, way past midnight, every single night I was in town?
Yeah. I don't do that for many people. Like unless I'm working, I don't go out that much anymore because
it's so honored.
Exhausting. But like, I'm either, the only reasons that I'm up is because I'm engaged in such a great conversation, or hanging out with people that I really care about, or I'm at a concert or whatever, or I'm working because I'm like nerding out on whatever it is that I'm doing. My hair keeps on getting in my way. I can see that I'm like constantly like adjusting it. That's kind of.
I love it. It's sort of like you're like on a modeling shoot, with the fan, the wind is blowing the hair.
it's like woo! Okay.
It's like you're on the cover of Vogue magazine right now.
I don't know about that. Okay, so the next thing, Scott, is I have this game. It's called Vulnerability is Sexy. I've been pulling cards. We're not playing it the way that it's supposed to be played, but it has these amazing questions, and we don't know what the questions are until we pull them. And basically, I'm going to give you one of three categories that you can pick, and then I'll read the question, and then we'll both answer it. Are you ready?
Wow, great. Okay, cool.
So one of them is just like a general icebreaker type question. Like, so the category is break the ice. The second category is a little bit more deep, called get vulnerable. And the third category is laugh a little. So maybe a little bit more humorous or funny. So what would you like to go with?
Oh, wow. Well, they all sound great. But I think maybe we're going to be probably laughing a lot already. So maybe we go with the vulnerable one, because that sounds like the scariest one to do.
Sounds good.
I like doing scary things.
Whoa. Okay. So here's it's going to take a while to focus, but the question is, under what circumstances are you inclined to lie?
Ooh.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first? This is probably the most like scandalous one that I've had so far in 40 episodes.
This is very scandalous. What would you prefer? Do you usually prefer to go first, or do you usually prefer to have your guests?
I throw it to you, so you can decide.
I'll go first.
Okay.
You know why I'm going to go first? Because I don't want to copy your answer.
Okay. Then that means I have to. So I'll be the one to have to make up another one if it's the same.
Exactly. Because the thing is, you'll give a great answer, and I'll say, "Oh yeah, me too." Me too.
Okay, you go first then.
Okay, I'll go first. So the question is, under what circumstances are you inclined to lie?
Yes.
That's a good question. The funny thing is, many years ago, I read this book called Radical Honesty. Mm-hmm. And it really impacted me about about actually just being honest as much as you can in your life with everything, not just being honest with other people, but also being honest to yourself, with yourself about your goals, what your blocks are and things like that. And so ever since that book, I've been on this path of trying to be as honest as possible and saying what's on my mind to other people and seeing the flaws within myself.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have noticed, though, that there are times when I will lie a little bit, and they're usually circumstances when I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings.
Yeah.
And I think that, for example, a lot of people that I know, they have worth issues when it comes to money, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Many people that I know talk about how, they never have money, they don't know what to do, they're always broke. And I can see that they have so many opportunities in their life to be making tons and tons of money, because these are very, very talented people that have skills that can be marketed and sold and products that they can sell, but they're just a little bit too scared. And sometimes, this is just one example, instead of me coming straight out and saying, I think that this might just be a self-worth issue about money, and I think that you can totally save this, sometimes I'll just take their side and I'll say, oh yeah, that sucks that it's really, really hard to make money. So in a way, I'm lying to them by omission. I'm lying by not actually telling them what I really see,
Yeah.
or what I really feel about their situation.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times I'll have people who say to me that, I'm doing all these things with my health and I can't lose weight. These are not clients of mine who are paying me to coach them and guide them. And I know exactly what to say to them, but I know that based on other things they've said, that they're not ready to receive the information yet. And so I'll lie by being quiet and not saying what I think will really, really help them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
I'm the same.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like I'm lying by omission, by not saying what's really on my mind and what I feel could really help them. Because I'm such in many ways, I'm an empath where I can feel if someone can handle the truth,
Yeah.
or they need to be cuddled a little bit more. And so I coddle them.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately hurtful. It's hurtful because I'm not helping them. I'm not helping me. Yeah. I don't know if that sounds. No,
I 100%. Yes, me too. It's similar. No, totally similar answer. And I will say that, from me, I suck at lying, and until I got certified as a body language trainer and learned about lie detection, I just knew that it was very easy to tell when I was lying, because I suck at lying. And now I'm like, oh, interesting. And I'm like, now that I have this knowledge, I'm like, oh, now I can do things a little bit differently, which is not good. But that's still not, I'm not feeling inclined to lie more because I have this information. But just like you, I tend to so when you're talking about lying by omission, there's 3 different types of lying, and the only 2 that I can think of right now is by saying the complete, telling a complete lie, and then the other one is lying by omission. So you're officially actually lying, or I think the third one is you're just kind of bending the truth a little, so a little white lie. But those are all that's all lie detection. And mine are, when I don't want to hurt people, I don't like saying no. So sometimes I will come up with an excuse to say that I can't do this because, then my kids, and there's just too much on my plate, when I just really don't want to go. And that has been something that I have been actually working on, because there was an event recently that I was like, I really don't want to go to this. And I was sitting here trying to come up with an excuse to not go. And I'm like, why don't I just say what's on my mind? And what's interesting about that situation is that other things changed. So I'm like, then I ended up going to the event afterwards
Oh,
because
you did?
things changed because, well, the situation changed and made it in a way where I was like, okay, I'm more willing to go to this now. But it was just interesting because I was sitting with it and I got quiet because I'm like, this is really truly what I don't want to do. And I spent my entire life empowering people to live life their way. And if I'm sitting here, like not talking my talk and I'm kind of making up excuses, that's one thing. Now, there's also other times, particularly like when I haven't, there's like an argument with a family member or a friend that I know will never get resolved because we're on two separate sides of the street and we're never going to see eye to eye, at least in the near future. And I'm not willing to engage in an argument. So I will lie in those instances too and just shut my mouth. So I'll lie by omission. So I won't even speak my truth because and my rationale is because I want to, I'm doing it. And this is like something that my coach helped me with, is just doing it in the interest of my own heart and my own sanity, or just because it's like when you're trying to, when you want to speak your truth and you're arguing and you're never going to see eye to eye, like, does that even help you in a sense? Because, you'll continue to just spin in your wheels and you'll continue to be stressed about it. And so to be kind to myself, I just decide not to engage at all. So that could also be seen as lying, but that's definitely sometimes what I do. So if I know that somebody says something that I don't agree with, I might just be like, oh, interesting. And I won't say anything else, even though I'm like raging inside. So yeah.
Yes.
It's a good question.
I think that's actually maybe the smartest time to lie, because you know that nothing positive is going to come out of that discussion. Yeah. Like having a political debate, for example, like with a family member who's never going to change their mind.
I always walk away. That's just my, I'm not lying, I guess, but it's just, I'm not speaking my truth. Like I'm kind of lying to myself and having my own dialogue and not engaging.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, and that's a situation that I lie in too, because I just say what you said, I say interesting, or I just stay quiet. But I think you're right. Sometimes lying for our own sanity in those situations actually may be the most valid time to lie. Yeah. If you already know, especially if you've tried in the past and it hasn't led anywhere with that particular person. And it's just sometimes just to keep the peace. Yeah. You said you're really bad at lying. In what way? How can people know if you're actually verbally saying a lie? Like you said, you're bad at it. So how can people tell?
So I don't know what my new, because basically when I was learning all this stuff about lie detection, they said like the way you lie is going to change. I haven't really lied since then, but I'm thinking about it for sure. Like if I were to lie, like how would I do something differently? Because understanding how somebody lies is focused on like really understanding that person's tells. So there's stuff out there that'll say if people are like looking up in a direction, then maybe they're lying, but that's not necessarily true. You have to really get to understand the baseline of that person. So I think that a lot of times in my past, when I do a lot of lie by omission and I would get really quiet. So that would be something that would be a tell that would cause somebody to potentially say like, are you, and I talk a lot. So like if I get quiet, there's like, are you okay? That there's something on my mind and I'm either lying by omission. I'm not good at saying outright lies. And I just don't like to lie in general. But like sometimes when I'm lying, like I'll just laugh because I'm lying. Like I lie to my kids all the time as a, just to be funny. And I can't, like I have to laugh because I'm like, yeah, like your ear will fall off. But now I don't know because I'm like, okay, now I know my tells. So like, because I'm aware of it, now I'm like, do I want to do it differently? So I couldn't really even tell you if I was lying, like what would that look like? Cause I don't know. Cause now it's like kind of in my mind, but it's a nice little trick.
That's very, very cool to know your own tells.
Yeah. Cool. And I can do something where I can let people know what their tells are if they're curious. So that's something that I can do. Like I can basically like analyze them and then tell you like this is what you do. So it's like a human lie detector, which is kind of really interesting.
Was this like a program you went through, like this lie detection program?
Yeah. It's a body language program, but there was an element of lie detection. It's very complex. Like, so I just know basics, but I know enough to do a little bit of damage.
Wow, that's amazing. You know what's funny? You brought up
go ahead. No, you can. Really good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just one real quick thing. You actually brought up a really good thing about the lying, about the excuses. Like if you don't want to go to an event or you want to say no to something and coming up with an excuse. And that was something I used to do a lot. And recently, like over the last year, I've actually started saying, when I say no to things, I've actually started just saying the truth, and the funny thing is, because you're always so worried, you're not you, but I'm always so worried about like how people are going to react. And I found that people are totally fine with just the truth. Like, so now I'll just say, I don't want to go because I just am feeling too tired. Or I don't want to go because that's really not my type of event that I feel like would make me happy. And the funny thing is, just like laying it out there on the line, it's funny, people don't actually have the negative reaction that I expected them to have.
It's totally true.
In a way, it almost empowers them to say it in the future, their own truth in the future.
Yeah. So it's like you got to instill these habits, and it will be infectious, just like how everything in media right now is skewing us to more negative stuff, which is why I'm trying to combat that. And one last thing before we start talking about health, and I really want to make sure that we give some good time to talk about that and our theme. And you won't have anything prepared because you didn't have the notes, but I have my one segment called Cheerful News. And we both generally come up with a story that either not come up with, but find a story that is positive, either already existing in the news to give it a little bit more energy and push it through the interwebs, or even a story from our own lives or something that we know that somebody else experienced, and just sharing it because it's all about the transfer of energy. And I want positive news out there as much as possible. So the story that I pulled this week, and I just think this is fun. I'm going to maybe I'll show you this was on CNN. I had to rush to get this one out, but there were these Harvard students that were running for student government, and they did this whole viral video of like just why they needed to be elected, and they won, and it was just amazing. And this is like this type of stuff that I like, that's viral. It's like people congregating and doing something really creative and different based on what it is that they're working on. And so this was like a campaign video, and it was just super cool. So that's my story. And I'm sure that it was already viral, but it's like, let me just push that even more, because, there's all of these students who, are of color, and just they're just all getting together. And it's not all people like that are people of color in that, but like they're like rapping in the video, and it's musically inclined. So of course I'm already like, done. I want that. So I just wanted to share that if people haven't heard about it yet, but I'm sure that one. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's so funny that you say this, because this is actually why I stopped watching TV and stopped watching the news and stopped reading the news multiple years ago, because it was 95% negative. That was my perception. It just felt 95% negative, put me in such a negative mood. And once I started ignoring the news, I actually became a much, much happier person.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they want to instill such fear in us, and such negativity, and such like divisiveness. And so I love that you're doing this, that you're finding positive news stories to bring positivity to the world.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
And a lot of media sites are starting to have their little segments of like positive news stories. So it's becoming a little bit easier to find articles and stuff that's out there. And some of them, are just like, this random coincidental thing happened. That's great. Or, so there's a lot of stories that come out of, people's misfortunes, but then something great comes out of it as a result. And so, that's still positive, even though it can sometimes start with a negative. But, I think that our brains are wired in a way where we just like crave drama and conflict and all that stuff. And so it's kind of hard, because media plays to those weaknesses, and I want to try to change the narrative, which we talked about at length at our dinner conversation, and that's going to be a journey for 2020 and beyond for me. So, it's just starting here. So, but
Apryl,
anyway.
I love that. Apryl, I love that. And you, and by the way, you bring up a really, really good point, which is that we as humans, I was just reading this like a couple of weeks ago, that we as humans, we're actually evolutionarily wired to obsess about the negative and focus on drama and focus on conflicts and focus on problems, because it actually ensured our evolutionary survival. Like we always had to be alert to like the animals that were coming to attack us, or when we were living in caves, or people that might be coming to try to steal our limited food supply, or trying to murder us, or take over our small little village. And so, the fact that we are so hyper alert to negativity and conflict actually enabled our evolutionary survival.
Yeah.
I forgot where I read this, but it doesn't really serve us, in like interpersonal relationships in modern day society.
So how do we make laughter that new thing, that new requirement for survival? I don't know. That's gonna be something that I need to figure out, because I think that you can leverage negativity, but like then laugh about it. Like that's something that I see in some sort of video I want to create or something down the road. So we shall see. We shall see.
I love that. I love that laughter is the new survival tool.
Yes. Let's write that down as a quote. Right. All right. Are you ready to talk about health?
Yeah.
I know that if we could talk about so many fun things for the hour, but I definitely want to kind of dive into this idea. Okay. So we're talking about health being easier, or there's an easy way to being healthy, right?
Yes.
So I come from this perspective of like, I generally eat okay. I've dealt with a lot of this idea of like, sometimes I like to go to McDonald's, and sometimes I like to, I have a very busy life. So fast food is kind of part of the way that I live. And I had a lot of guilt for the last, few years, or, in my 30s, about, because I choose to be open to eating at McDonald's, I'm not healthy. And a lot of times I would get a lot of judgment. And so my journey to eating healthy has kind of been this like trying to meet the expectations of what society says is healthy. And I'm like, why am I not vegan? Why don't I try vegetarian? Or why don't I just like have, or not eat processed sugars? Like the truth of the matter is I like sugar. So trying to figure out what that meant for me. And 2019 was the first year where I said, okay, I need to start defining, just like I define balance, success, all of these things that I'm empowering other people to define for themselves. What's going to be one healthy step that I can take that's easy and that's simple? And in the past year, I made the decision to just make sure as much as possible, which I can't say I'm batting 100% here, but the focus was just eat 3 meals a day, because I never ate 3 meals a day. I would always just get up, drink a cup of coffee, and then wait until I was starving, which was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then like gorge myself on whatever, and then eat dinner like a couple hours later, and then I wasn't as hungry. So it was just like a weird pattern, and I tried to just eat 3 meals. So I eat a really small breakfast, I kind of eat a small lunch, and then a bigger dinner, which is kind of like what they talk about anyways. And in this last year, I've gained 15 pounds, which you probably can't see, but like I've definitely gained. I'm a little bit more meaty. I'm actually happy, because my doctor was telling me I needed to gain weight, and I couldn't figure out how to do that. And so what I tend to
cannot tell. I can't tell.
Yeah. And so what I tend to promote is like just trying to make subtle changes that you can feel good about, have those be a win, because we have to have health as part of our daily routine, no matter what. And so to try to go and do a crazy diet or anything like that, especially when you're just somebody who like, I have people telling me all the time, like, you have to cut out processed sugars. And I like cannot do it for the life of me. Like I get angry. I'm like, no, I need to have my candy. But but I'm also now curious, like, how much candy do I really eat? Because I don't tend to eat pastries. I don't eat cake that much. And so next year for 2020, my goal is to keep a food journal. And I found a journal that like tracks sleep, food, and some other exercise. And I don't have data. So I was like, maybe I'll just actually create some data, so I actually have awareness for like how much I'm eating of everything and to really see how unhealthy I am, because I have this perspective that I might be eating unhealthy, but maybe it's not. So that's my perspective. And I know for you, you said you did vegetarian, vegan, and now keto, right?
I was vegetarian. I started off as eating whatever I wanted to eat, and then I went vegetarian, then vegan, then I went raw, then I went backwards to pescatarian, and then I started eating meat again, and now I'm keto, and I do keto health coaching for people.
Yeah.
It's funny what you said about the sugar thing. One of the reasons that you love sugar so much, or all of us love sugar so much, is because it is actually an addictive substance. It's actually more addictive than cocaine, and it lights up the same regions of the brain that cocaine does. And so all of us are addicted to sugar. Once you get a little bit in your mouth, you can't stop. And then, and the next day you need some. Next day you need some. It's really a crazy substance.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, yet again, it's also served an evolutionary purpose also, which is amazing. We had such limited little access to sugar back when we were evolving that it actually served a purpose, which is that it actually fattened us up. And so we actually had extra fat on our bodies that our bodies could eat and live off of during the times when we didn't have access to other food. But we did not have 24/7 access to sugar. And it was very limited. And we only had access to sugar like during the summer months. And even then, it wasn't the same type of sugar that we have today.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that all of these issues, like, for example, maybe gaining 15 pounds, for example, so gaining weight, heart attacks, type 2 diabetes, strokes, Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, depression, dementia, especially autoimmune disorders. All of these things, it turns out, are all related to the exact same thing. All of them are caused by the same thing. And that one thing is insulin resistance in the body. And that's it. And what happens is, because insulin resistance causes inflammation in the body, and it causes all these other problems. Pretty much 80 to 90% of modern diseases are caused by insulin resistance. Now, we've been told that all these diseases are caused by a whole bunch of things. We've been told they've been caused by eating too much fat, eating too much cholesterol, by eating too many calories, by not exercising enough, by, I'm trying to think of some of the other things we've been told. That we're letting our metabolism drop when it comes to obesity. We're not eating enough during the day. We have to eat 6 small meals. But the thing is, all these things that we've been told are actually wrong. All the things that we've been told to do actually exacerbate the problem as opposed to alleviate the problem. So, for example, you're talking about eating 3 small meals a day. The funny thing is, there's actually some truth to what you just said about that being good, because most people are snacking throughout the day. They're eating 6 to 10 small meals a day. In fact, most people wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, and they've never stopped eating the entire day. They're eating snacks in the morning, snacks in the afternoon, snacks in between every meal, snacks before they go to sleep. So you actually going down from that, which most people do, down to 3 meals a day is actually a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Going down to even 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day is even better, because that brings in the concept of intermittent fasting. Now, a lot of people can't skip a meal yet, and there's reasons for that as well. I don't want to get too technical, but there's reasons for that, and it's because their body is actually dependent on external sugar. And so that's a whole other thing that we can talk about later. But but the funny thing is, though, by skipping meals, so for example, let's say you wake up and you just have black coffee, and you skip breakfast, that's actually an incredibly powerful and healthy thing to do for the human body, because it enables the insulin in the body to go from being resistant, which means that your insulin's in a constantly high state in your body. It enables your insulin a chance to get low again. And what happens is when the insulin goes low again, all of a sudden, people start burning fat, people start losing weight, people start sleeping better, their body becomes less inflamed, their arteries are no longer clogged. It's not fat and cholesterol that clog the arteries, it's actually the insulin resistance, which actually causes the inflammation of the arteries. And so what happens is once you get into a state where your insulin actually drops low, suddenly you and everybody else is on the path to healing, getting thin and fit again.
Okay.
Other
So
things
that's
we've
like
been
the
told.
big factor. And this is how they see it in the keto world, in terms of that first step is figuring out how to get that insulin resistance. I'm not using the right terminology because I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. But fixing that, and then afterwards, is that how it works?
That is correct. Yeah, insulin resistance. Yeah, fixing the insulin resistance. And the opposite of that is, so insulin resistance basically means that your insulin's in a constant high level in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And the fix to that is to make the insulin low in your body most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is insulin sensitivity. So the two words they use are insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. So the good place, I just try to use, I was getting a little technical there with those technical terms, but usually the way I describe it to people is high and low. And when the insulin is at a low level in the body, that's when all the healing takes place. That's when all the fat burning takes place. That's when all the good things happen in the human body. And the funny thing is the keto lifestyle, we put a word on this in this day and age, and it's the keto lifestyle. And the funny thing is, humans have actually known about the keto lifestyle for generations and generations and generations, because it's how we traditionally lived like 200 years ago. If you study tribal cultures, and primitive, what we now call primitive cultures, the funny thing is all of them were naturally living the keto lifestyle. They didn't call it keto. It was just the way that humans lived. And so it just comes down to two things. It just comes down to what people eat and when they eat. So the thing is, they weren't eating all the time because they did not have access to food 24/7, which kept their insulin low. And the other thing is, what were they eating? They actually were not eating carbs. They were not eating sugars. They were maybe eating a little bit of fruit. They certainly were not eating anything processed, that came out of a chemical lab or a factory. Like these processed vegetable oils are the worst, like canola oil, soybean oil. We've been told all those things are healthy, and they're not. But when you look at these tribal cultures that survived, they had to survive for us to be here, and they had such incredible health outside of infectious diseases, which is totally different because they didn't know about hand washing and bacteria and stuff. So that's a whole other thing. But as far as their bodies were muscular and strong, and they didn't have any of the diseases we have today. They had a different set of diseases, but they didn't have heart disease, diabetes, strokes, cancers, things like that. So what were they eating? What were they doing? They were eating high fat diets that were high in fat, high in cholesterol. Their diets were mostly, almost 100% animal products. The things that we have been told are the worst thing on the planet for us to eat. Avoid animal anything. Avoid meat. Avoid chicken with the skin on. If you're going to eat chicken, it's got to be without the skin on. But that's not true, actually. Your body actually can't process the protein without the fat along with it. And the fat is in the skin.
I love the skin on chicken.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, your body's actually craving that health of the skin. So all these things we've been told to demonize are actually the things that bring us health. And so, for example, let's say you go to get a hamburger somewhere. Let's say you go out to get a bacon double cheeseburger somewhere. Now, by the way, this is a whole other topic which we won't get into today. Factory farmed meats are actually really bad for us, and they have, antibiotics in them, and they're fed GMO corn and all that stuff. So let's assume we're talking about healthy grass-fed beef. So let's say you want to go out for a double bacon cheeseburger, right? Everyone would tell you, oh my gosh, that is the most unhealthy thing ever. You're going to clog your arteries. You're going to die. You're going to get cancer. You're going to do this.
It's like a normal meal for me, which is why
Right.
you could see some of the guilt that comes up with like,
Oh, yeah. Well, the great thing is you actually don't need to feel guilty. The funny thing is the bacon, the cheese, and the burger, those are actually not the things that cause problems. Those three things actually bring health to the human body. It's actually even better if you can get raw cheese. Raw dairy is actually the ultimate dairy. The pasteurized dairy is, it's a little questionable, but the meat, the cheese, and the bacon, those are filled with saturated fats. And that saturated fat is what brings health to the human body. The brain thrives on saturated fat. You go down a vegan path, you are starving your brain of saturated fats. That's why vegans, ironically enough, have a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease, higher incidence of stroke, higher incidence of heart attacks, all these things. And the funny thing is we've been told the opposite. And so the funny
where
thing
does
is
that come from? Like, because I mean, and I'm sitting here listening to you, like I have so many friends that are vegan, and I mean, I wouldn't be able to feel like I knew very intelligently to be like, this is what other research shows, and I feel like there's just so much out there, and it can be overwhelming. And I know that you were vegan before, so like you're saying it from this perspective, but it's just really interesting. Um, I'm guessing that there are people like, okay, whatever, like this is what makes me feel good, so I'm going to do it. But it's just interesting. I don't know how you
yeah, well,
answer that.
I'll answer that question. Well, yeah, I'll give you three points here. One is, you're right, I was vegan. I forgot to finish this story earlier, which is that I started off vegetarian, then I went vegan,
Can
and
you
then I went
explain why you
raw.
decided to change from vegetarian to vegan? I'm like curious about like the steps for like the decision points for why you decided to switch every time.
Right. Well, essentially, I bought into all the myths that we have been told, which we can talk about why these myths even exist to begin with.
Mhm.
I bought bought into 100% that we need to be living on a plant-based diet, that we need to avoid fat and cholesterol, that we need to, get animal products out of our diet completely. And I mean, I just bought into it. It's essentially the same lie that we've been told for the last 70 to 100 years in our country. Really, veganism is nothing more than the extreme commitment to the lies that we've already been told, right? All the lies we've been told in our lifetime and our parents' lifetime has been avoid animal products, avoid saturated fat, avoid cholesterol. And so that's pretty much everything we've been told. And veganism is simply saying, I fully believe in this and I'm taking it to the extreme. Now,
Okay.
as I did it in my own, and the funny thing is, anyone can experiment with this long term because we can all experiment on our own bodies with the food we eat.
Mhm.
And what was happening was, when I went from meat eater to vegetarian, I started getting sick a lot. I started getting bronchitis several times a year. I started gaining weight. I started losing my hair. There was all these things happening. But I was like, oh, well, it's because I'm not exercising. That's why I'm gaining weight. I'm actually losing my hair because I'm getting older. I don't have energy because, you know why? Because I'm not doubled down enough on this. So what I did was, and why am I getting sick? Because I'm not doing it religiously enough. So I switched to the vegan version of it, and I started getting sick even more. I started getting fatter and fatter and fatter. I had black circles under my eyes all the time. Now, this is stuff that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in
Yeah,
one
yeah,
day. It
for
doesn't happen
sure.
in a month. Yeah, I mean, I was a vegan for something like 5 or 6 years, and I was a vegetarian for 10 years before that. So I was experimenting with this lifestyle for 15 years, and I just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Like, you could see it on me. I mean, I wasn't like a super, super fat guy, but when I went in to get my like fat obesity check, like they did the calipers on me and stuff,
Yeah.
and it was like, yeah, and it was like, oh, you are 25 or 27% fat, which is actually categorized as obese. So even though I looked slightly thinnish on the outside, my body was obese, which also meant I had a fatty liver as well. And so, and it wasn't until a buddy of mine, his name's John McLean, and he actually wrote a book called The Low Carb Revolution. I bumped into him. I didn't know this guy. He was at a friend's party. And he said, oh, I'm an author on health books. That's what he told me. And I said, oh my God, you're going to be so pleased at me. I am super, super healthy. I've been a vegan for 6 years. I haven't had any animal products. all I do is juice every day and have smoothies and do, you know, all these healthy grains and stuff. And he just looked at me and said, you are killing yourself. He said, you actually need fat in your diet. And it was the first time in my entire life I'd ever heard anybody say that. Once I was awoken to that, and I realized that there are thousands of doctors out there that have been screaming this message since the 1960s that we need fat. And there's hundreds of thousands of books written on this that you can find on Amazon. I could give you a list of my top 50 favorite ones because I've read about 50 of them now, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, more than 50. I probably read about 60 now at this point. So I can give you my top 50 of 60. It turns out that the scientific evidence has always been there that we need in our diet fat and cholesterol and protein. And these are the three things that bring health to the human body. And it turns out, I know this is going to shock everybody because it shocked me as well. Turns out that the more we actually eat plants and grains, the more harm and damage we do to our human body. And that also, of course, includes sugar. Like, I think everybody in the world now finally admits that sugar is a poison. And so that almost goes without saying. Like, no
As
matter
I take a sip of some Sprite.
right. And high fructose corn syrup is one of the worst. I mean, everyone agrees that sugar is bad. So we all know that. That's like not controversial anymore. But the new controversy, the new world war that's happening now is the vegans versus the meat eaters. And I was on the vegan team.
This is like a cartoon. Like, I'm just...
Exactly. It's a cartoon. So going back to what I was saying earlier about the hamburger, it's not the bacon, cheese, and meat that is fattening and sickening America. But you know what is sickening America? This is the thing. People are not they're not going out to buy a hamburger, and they're not doing what I do, which is they're not buying the bacon double cheeseburger and having it wrapped in lettuce. The thing that's killing everybody and is giving everybody our modern diseases is the following: the bun, the French fries, not just the potatoes themselves, but are you ready for this? They're fried in canola oil. For years, up until like 1970 or something, McDonald's used to fry their potatoes in beef fat. We've been told our whole lives, oh my God, avoid beef fat, avoid lard, avoid butter. Turns out butter is a health food. Lard is a health food. Beef fat is a health food. And so the thing that's killing people when they go to these restaurants is the bun, the potatoes, the canola oil. It's a toxic oil, canola oil. Any vegetable oil is a toxic oil. Not just that, what else are people getting when they go to get their burgers? They're getting Coca-Cola. They're also getting milkshakes, right? Which is loaded with like 85 grams of sugar. So what happens is someone goes out for a meal, hamburger, fries, milkshake, and Coke. And the funny thing is everyone's like, oh my God, you're killing yourself. And they know it. They know it's unhealthy, but they don't know why it's unhealthy. If they just took the meat, the cheese, and the bacon and ate that every single day and got rid of the bun, the French fries, the vegetable oil, the Coke, and the milkshake, if they got rid of that stuff, but ate the bacon, cheese, and the meat, they would lose weight. They would burn fat every day. Their arteries would actually clear, and they would bring full health to the human body. That's the irony.
That is interesting.
So you brought up a question: is how do we have all this misinformation? This is the hardest part, and this is why I decided to enter this field. Yeah. Because everybody's confused. Everybody's loaded with information coming at them from all angles. Nobody knows what to believe. Everyone's getting all this misinformation, and it's so confusing. It's so difficult to separate the myths from the truth.
Yeah.
And the reason is because there's billions and trillions of dollars being pumped into giving us myths. The American Heart Association, for example, and this is just one example of many examples I have. The American Heart Association, the biggest liars on the planet, have told us, avoid meat, avoid saturated fat, avoid this. Well, just because it has an official title and has this beautiful symbol and it's somehow related with the US government, people believe them. But if you actually look at the history of the American Heart Association, It is an evil, evil, evil history. They were actually this little tiny ragtag group of doctors that were trying to figure out what causes heart disease. And they had no money, and their organization was going to go under until they had a savior. And their savior gave them something like $150 million or something. I'm getting the number wrong. I don't actually remember the number. Yeah. Maybe it was only $50 million. I don't know. But this is back like in the 60s or whatever. I should probably like re-look up these facts so I have the exact numbers.
That's okay.
It doesn't make a difference really. The point is that this little tiny organization called the American Heart Association was going to go out of business. They had no funding. They needed to pay their mortgages. But a white knight came bouncing in on the white horse. And this white knight was Procter & Gamble, the makers of Crisco, the vegetable oil that has actually killed millions of people because it actually clogs arteries. And so this corporation came in, gave them tons and tons of money. And all of a sudden, these doctors were flush with money, and their organization had so much influence and so much power. But all they had to do was promote Crisco and promote the other Procter & Gamble products like margarine, which kills. Margarine is filled with trans fats. That's actually the bad fat. There actually is one bad fat. It's trans fats. So Procter & Gamble gave these doctors all this money, and all the doctors had to do was say, avoid fat, avoid cholesterol, but purchase all these products from Procter & Gamble. Crisco, which is, vegetable oil, which kills people. Margarine, vegetable oil, which kills people. And all these other wonderful Procter & Gamble products. The American Heart Association exists to serve the people who are giving them money. And so to this day, who's now giving American Heart Association money? Still Procter & Gamble. Also Kellogg's. Also the fast food companies. Guess who else gives the AHA, American Heart Association, gives them money? Coca-Cola. If you follow the effing money, I almost swore on your show and I caught myself.
You could if you want to.
Thanks so much. If you follow the money, you will see why we're getting so much misinformation. You and me can't, and all the other friends and family of ours, we can't possibly compete against a multi-billion-dollar ad campaign that's slaughtering us with misinformation. And the misinformation doesn't just come in advertisements, because we all know now to be skeptical of advertisements. It comes in fake studies. It comes in fake research studies. It comes with those alarming articles. There was an alarming article like last year that said, coconut oil kills millions, sponsored by the American Heart Association. Well, hold on a second. The president of the American Heart Association actually had a stroke last year. And it's like, so wait, if he's following his own advice, which is avoid coconut oil and eat margarine, this guy had a freaking stroke. And it's like, of course, so the coconut oil is actually healing to the human body, because there are certain oils that are actually very healthy for us. And coconut oil is one of them. Olive oil is one of them. Anything animal product is healthy. But Kellogg's, right? They support the AHA, which is why when you pick up a box of whatever Kellogg's cereal is, Cheerios, I guess, is Kellogg's. I actually don't know what their brands are. But there's a stamp. What's that?
Frosted Flakes, which is really good.
Oh my God, I know, which is so terrible for us. Right? There's a stamp on it that says American Heart Association approved. That is like,
I'm going to go look that up now.
Yeah, look it up. You know, the thing is, right? It's so amazing, right? Because the makers of Cheerios, and I'm just using that as an example, it's any of these cereals that have the stamp of approval.
Yeah.
They gave money to the American Heart Association, so the American Heart Association then puts the stamp of approval. It's just a revolving door. They pay money to this fake organization that then puts a stamp of approval on the cereal, and then the cereal company keeps giving them money. So this is more insidious than advertising, because at least with advertising, me and you can sit on the couch and we're watching the advertising and we're like, oh, they're advertising Coca-Cola with a cute polar bear, but we know it's bad for us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot more insidious when there's a stamp of approval from a legitimate sounding organization. So it turns out there is no such thing as healthy grains. Mr. Kellogg himself, the guy who started Kellogg's, he was one of the first two people that started promoting grains for humans to eat. There is no such thing as healthy grains for the human body, whether it's sprouted wheat, whether it's whole wheat, whether it's processed wheat. There is no such thing in everybody. It causes gut permeability, it causes autoimmune disorders, and it clogs our arteries, not fat and cholesterol. So now the thing is, some people are more sensitive to it than others. So some people take in the wheat and they immediately feel an effect and they have stomach aches and they get in pain. Other people are less sensitive to it. So it takes years for the toxicity to really start affecting their body. But humans were not meant to eat grains. It was not meant for us to eat. But Mr. Kellogg, going back to Mr. Kellogg, he actually knew over 100 years ago that it made people sick and that it made people weak. But he was a puritanical religious zealot. And he found out that by feeding wheat to men, their sex drive was lower and they could no longer perform, they could no longer get erections, that they could no longer that they no longer had a sexual drive, that it lowered their testosterone. And he loved that because he believed that sex was a sin. You could look all this up. So what he started doing was he started promoting cereals and wheats and grains in order to keep men pure. So they wouldn't masturbate and they wouldn't have sex and they wouldn't have sex drives and they would be too weak to actually think about sex. Kellogg's whole entire purpose was to get people to not have sex. And he knew, it's crazy, right?
Like, okay.
And so, yeah, so it's nuts, right? And what are some of the things we deal with today? Men have ED, men have testosterone problems. We have all sorts of problems. Why? Because we've been told to eat healthy grains. No such thing as healthy grains. Now, look, I'm not going to deny like having granola and having sugar tastes so incredible, but we do have to reconcile that there's some things that taste good which are really damaging to us. But you know what also tastes good? Bacon. And that actually heals the cells of the human body. So go on. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I know that I feel like our conversation is I don't even know. I mean, I think I knew where it was going to go and it kind of went there. And I think that there's this bigger like issue about this idea of being healthy, which is like there I mean, and this is interesting because this is coming from perspectives of two different people who live two different very like healthy lifestyles. And I don't even know. I'd be curious to see how we even define healthy in the first place. That was definitely one of the questions that I should have started with. But I think, and I, I'm obviously a completely open-minded person, and I know that you threw a lot of data out there, and that I adore you, and I'm not saying that I like disagree with what you're saying, but it almost still just, if I had to kind of like summarize like where we've gone with this conversation, I think there's this element of, a lot of people, will ascribe to certain things in certain diets because of what they hear and what they're told. And I think one of the things that I want to empower people to do as they're trying to choose their own journey of health is to make sure that you do your research, right? Like, I think that, you shared everything that you've shared in terms of your journey and the things that you've realized over the years, and even just paying attention to, because now you're doing keto, you're back to eating meats, and you feel fantastic, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Oh, great point. I actually didn't finish that story, which is that once I turned keto, the weight, my fat just melted off my body. All my energy came back. My sex drive came back. My
Yay.
freaking hair started growing back again,
Yeah.
which was amazing. And all of a sudden, I had all these things that I used to have when I was younger in terms of health and energy and complexion and everything once I went down that keto path. So so I'm basically a recovering vegan.
Yeah. And what I like about this story is that it really helps you kind of see that it's really important that, I know not everybody is living the keto lifestyle. And I want to actually ask you, like, more specifically, because I think that this might help people. Obviously, if you are watching this and you are interested in the keto lifestyle, Scott is 100% the person to go to. If you're still not sure, and I'm not a health coach, so I can't even speak to it, but just as a regular human being who's kind of struggling along with it with you, is just really thinking about, what is healthy based on the facts that you're given, being empowered to kind of seeking out more information about things that you're not sure of. I mean, the bottom line is that at grocery stores, they feed you healthy stuff and they feed you not healthy stuff, and you have to decide. And, one of the things that I'm not necessarily willing to give up and completely cut out of my diet is sugar. It's just never going to happen. And I will just, and I have no guilt about that. The amount of it, and I say this until I am being faced with something else where it's like, it's starting to really show up in my own personal data. And so, here's an example. So I'm drinking these like 8-ounce cans of Sprite, and I only do them. I know, high fructose corn syrup, whatever. I do it because it's 8 ounces, and I cannot take pills unless I'm drinking like sparkling water or something. And I did try a whole year of sparkling water, which I was fine with, but the second I got sick, I just like wanted sugar, and then I got stuck, right? So I'm noticing that it's not necessarily healthy, but I'm doing smaller cans. I might be paying just as much than big cans, but I don't like to waste. So this kind of limits me in terms of how much I drink, because I drink that, then it's over. And a lot of times when I had the 12-ounce cans, I would barely drink any of it because I would just drink it just to take the pills. So that's kind of why I make that choice, and I do it unapologetically. But I will also make sure that I'm drinking a little bit more water, and that I'm not drinking pop anywhere else. This is the only time in the day that I drink pop, is when I'm taking pills. I'm trying to be more mindful about like the things that I'm eating. So instead, I don't really even eat that many grains, and that's probably a data point for me to just know that, I like bread, but I don't crave it. I don't eat potato chips. Like, I'll do it every so often, but I do everything in moderation. So like, I feel like for me, my definition of like eating healthy is just knowing things in moderation. If you're constantly eating candy, that can't be good for you. If you're constantly drinking alcohol, that can't be good for you. If you're, on one end of the spectrum in terms of like meats and veggies, like there's this middle ground that you can be in, and that's okay. But I think in terms of, trying to make your health journey be a little bit easier, you can make little modifications and kind of see which way you go, because you might really thrive off of being vegetarian, whether Scott believes it or not. And then you can also be somebody who, embraces the keto lifestyle or just eats meats and fats and all of that stuff. But I think that there's benefit to a bunch of things. You could disagree with me, but that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming from. But Scott, I wanted to ask you, do you agree or disagree with what I'm saying right now? And I know that you're coming from a perspective of doing something and being very focused on living these principles. But if, let's say, you were trying to convince me to live more of the keto lifestyle without like actually going full on into it, like what would be the base recommendations that you'd make for somebody so that we could then see if we started implementing those smaller habits into our lives? Yeah. Then it at least gives us the idea of, checking in with ourselves and seeing how we're feeling as we're making those adjustments, and then, then making that bigger exploration into something like keto or vice versa.
Totally. That's a great question. And and I think there are little baby steps you can see and check in with yourself to see how the changes are making changes. I think that if I were to give people 2 just baby steps just to start, to see if they feel any different, I would say that one of them is whenever they feel like eating something that is a refined carb. I mean, refined, like green vegetables are a carb, but those are healthy for us, for the most part. And what I mean by a refined carb is like the sugars, the potato chips you were talking about, the pretzels, the breads, any sort of breads, the grains, crackers, all that. So I would say that one thing you can make is whenever you want to reach for something like that, replace it with a stick of salted butter instead. And I know that sounds weird, right? But I eat butter as a snack. Now, there's actually lots of great keto snacks like nuts and all sorts of other things that we can talk about. But what I would say is instead of reaching for a chocolate bar, what you can do is reach for a stick of salted grass-fed butter instead. It tastes delicious. I just eat it. I eat it like a popsicle. Butter. The butter is a health food. Now, what's interesting is it's a salty taste as opposed to a sweet taste.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, by doing a substitution like that, you can have butter as much as you want, and it's so healthy. But by doing a substitution like that, yes, it's a different taste in your mouth, but you're actually giving your body health as opposed to potential disease. Cancer cells, by the way, they have one fatal flaw, which people don't actually talk about too much. Cancer cells can only thrive on sugar. It's the only thing that keeps them alive. So if you
I'm
starve
pretty
your
much
body,
screwed if I get cancer.
what's that? I'm sorry.
I said I'm pretty much screwed if I get cancer. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, if you starve the body of sugar, then you starve the cancer cells as well. And it turns out to be, and of course that's really healthy for the human body. Now, but now let's go back to your other point too, which is that you sometimes have potato chips, but you definitely will have some bread from time to time. You definitely love your Cokes and your chocolates and all that stuff. Well, the great news is, and I'm working on a downloadable PDF that people will be able to purchase from my website, which is food substitutions. My list of food substitutions. The great news is this: there are keto-friendly substitutions for every single thing that you named. So, for example, let's say that you are craving potato chips, which are refined carbs. They're really unhealthy for us. They're really bad for the human body. You can replace that with pork rinds instead. Pork rinds.
I eat pork rinds.
Those are so healthy. Just make sure, as long as you have the ones.
And you always think like this is probably unhealthy, but I like them anyways because I'm Filipino. Okay.
See,
there.
Those are actually healthy.
I'm doing one keto thing.
You are doing one keto thing. The other thing, yeah, exactly. So you want something crunchy in your mouth, right? Because really what you want is something crunchy and salty in your mouth. The potato chips are the bad crunchy salty, but the good crunchy salty is pork rinds, right? Let's say that you want to have some crackers and chips, right? Which are all bad for us because it's all grains. Well, what if you substituted that for nuts instead, right? Because nuts also have that crunchiness to them, but nuts are high in fat, low in carbs. Some nuts, macadamia nuts are the best nuts you could eat because they're the highest in fat and the lowest in carb. But the thing is, so if you wanted to reach for chips and crackers, what if you had nuts as your substitution instead?
Yeah.
The other thing you were talking about is the sugar. There are a lot of soft drinks now, luckily, thankfully, that are available that are not sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, and they're not sweetened with cane sugar, which is also bad for us, but they're sweetened with things like xylitol or stevia. These are very interesting products. These are actually made from plants. They taste like sugar, but they don't actually have a negative effect on our bodies as much as sugar does. So you could actually get a soda. So if you want to drink Sprite every day, you could actually get a Sprite substitute, which is a soda that's sweetened with stevia instead.
Yeah.
Stevia, stevia has actually not been shown to be that detrimental to the human body. So you'll be drinking something that tastes like Sprite, but you're not taking in the sugar. Same thing with chocolate.
Here, I'm like, I can't do it.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Same thing with like chocolate bars, by the way, right? There's stevia sweetened chocolate.
And I don't eat
bars.
a lot of chocolate. Like it's just very interesting. Like, I don't know. I've cut caffeine out of my diet just because I'm realizing that it's impacting my sleep. But like there's
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah. Caffeine affects my sleep too.
So but
so I think you actually brought up the best point of all, which is that no matter what step people take down this path, they can experiment on their own bodies, right? You substitute one thing for another thing and see how much better you feel, or substitute one thing for another thing and see how much weight you burn, like in the first, in the first couple of days or first couple of weeks.
If it makes you feel good, then keep doing it. Now, also know that as much as I love sugar and I could have more sugar and I want more sugar, I know that that's not good for me, right? So you have to have a little common sense, but you also can use your body as a data point and say, I just went 2 days without eating whatever grains, and I just noticed I had more energy. That's a data point that you need to take. And I think that that is your first steps and the easiest steps you can make without radically transforming your diet to being healthy. So
totally.
Yeah.
And I would recommend also that people, another baby step is skip breakfast every day. We've been told breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Guess who told us that? That was the breakfast companies that are selling breakfast foods. They're the ones that told us that. We actually need to give our bodies a break from eating so it has a chance to burn fat and get out the negative stuff the sugar that's in our bloodstream.
Yeah. But if you're looking to gain weight, then you can do it like what I'm doing, and you can eat breakfast. That's a data point. You never know. Like, I was like, I'm not losing weight, but I'm working out and I'm feeling really good and I'm feeling really healthy. And, and I know that I'm weird in that respect because I'm trying to gain weight and not lose. But anyways,
it's so funny.
And I'm just trying to. Oh, go ahead. Finish what you're going to say, and then I think we need to wrap up.
Yeah, it just comes down to people can actually see the results with their own body, right? Like people can get overwhelmed with all the news articles, that meat is bad, meat is good, meat is bad, meat is good. And it's like, well, hold on a second. You're a person. Why don't you do this for a week? Cut out all grains, cut out all sugars just for a week and substitute it with meats, cheeses, bacons, eggs. Eggs are so healthy. Right? Anything that's an animal product, and see what the difference is 1 week later. You can just test on your own body for 7 days.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a vegetarian keto, that's actually a little bit harder, but it can be done. Avocados, of course, are very high in fat. And they're very healthy for us. Mm-hmm. That's totally acceptable. Nuts, cheeses, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, this is the record for the longest Cheerful Conversations episode ever, but I think we had a lot to talk about and a couple bumps in the road, but I'm going to cut it now. And if you are obviously interested in learning more about keto or that type of lifestyle, or even making some of those changes, you can reach Scott, and all his information is in the video. And I will see you guys in episode 41. Thank you, Scott, so much for being here. We're going to chat for a little bit after we sign off, but
yay, thank you guys so much. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Does this mean, because we went too long, does this mean we're not going to get to hear you play your ukulele?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I'll save that for the next time, and I'll explain what that means later. So, okay. You guys, thank you so much. I will see you guys in episode 41. Bye.
Bye. Well, thank you, Apryl.